kind girl takes a man with no home inside. She didn't know he was a secret vampire king who only wanted her. The storm came suddenly, making the calm night messy and crazy. Rain hit Arya's small house windows like angry fists, and the wind howled through the trees with a loud sound that made her shake. She was making her easy dinner when the first bright light of lightning cut the sky, followed by thunder that made the bottom of her house shake. Arya put her face to the window, watching the storm be strong and wild. The road in the village had turned into a river of mud, and trash and broken bits flew through the air like dangerous rocks. She had lived in this house for 3 years now, ever since her grandmother died, but she had never seen weather this rough. As another flash of lightning lit up the land, something she saw caught her eye. A dark shape lay still on the side of the road, hard to see because of the heavy rain. At first, she thought it might be a tree branch that fell, or maybe a bag of food that had been blown from a cart. But as she looked closely through the glass, the shape seemed too big, too strangely placed. "Oh no," she said quietly, her breath making the cold window foggy. "That's a person." Without thinking, Arya took her thick, soft coat and put it over her head. She knew it was unsafe to go out in this weather, but she couldn't let someone die in the storm. Her grandmother had always told her that being nice was always good, even if others thought it was silly. The moment she opened her door, the wind almost pushed her down. Rain hit her face like cold, sharp needles, and she had to push hard against the strong wind to take each step. The muddy road pulled at her boots, trying to pull them off with every step. As she got closer to the person who had fallen, her heart started to beat fast. It was really a man, lying face down in a pool of dirty water. His clothes were ripped and let all over, and his long, dark hair was stuck to his head. He wasn't moving. "Sir," she shouted over the storm. "Sir, can you hear me?" He didn't answer. Arya fell onto her knees next to him, not worrying that the mud quickly soaked her dress. She put a shaky hand on his shoulder and slowly turned him over. The lightning decided that exact moment to flash again. And in that quick, bright moment, Arya saw his face well. Her breath stopped in her throat. Even though he was passed out and hurt by the storm, the man was very handsome. His face parts were sharp and noble, with high cheekbones and a strong chin. His skin was very light, almost not natural. But it was his eyes that really worried her. Even though they were closed now, she could see the shape of them under his eyelids. Eyes that seemed too big, too strangely smart for a normal face. But what bothered her most was the weird feeling that she knew him. She had never seen this man before in her life, she was sure of it, but looking at him felt like remembering a dream she had half forgotten. "Please be alive," she said softly, putting her ear to his chest. There was something, a heartbeat, weak and slow, but strong. A feeling of safety rushed over her, followed right away by a strong need to act. She couldn't carry him by herself, but somehow she had to get him inside before the storm killed them both. "Sir, I need you to help me," she said loudly, shaking his shoulder harder. "You must try to stand up. I can't leave you outside here." To her surprise, his eyes opened quickly. Arya's world wobbled. His eyes were the color of shiny moonlight, light and bright in a way that seemed not real. They focused on her face with a strong gaze that made her feel like he could see right into her heart. For a moment, neither of them moved or talked, stuck in that strange, exciting look. Then his mouth bent to the smallest of smiles, and when he spoke, his voice was like old smooth drink, soft, deep, and warm, even with the cold. "An angel," he whispered. His words were hard to hear over the storm. "I didn't think I would find an angel." "I'm not an angel," Arya said, though her voice sounded more shaky than she meant it to. "I'm just someone who doesn't want to see you die in the storm. Can you stand up?" He looked at her closely for another long time, and she had the weird feeling that he was trying to remember every part of her face. At last, he nodded slowly. "I can try." Helping him get up was a fight. He was taller than she had known, easily 6 feet, and even though he was thin, he was all hard muscle under his wet clothes. He used her for support as they walked toward her house, and she could feel a strange cold coming from his skin, as if the cold had gone deep inside his very bones. By the time they got to her door, both of them were out of breath from the hard work. Arya's small house had never felt so warm and friendly as it did when they finally fell inside, all wet and shaking. "Sit by the fire," she told him, leading him to the chair closest to the fireplace. "I'll get you dry clothes and something warm to eat." As she rushed around the house getting blankets and making the fire bigger, she knew very well that his eyes were watching her every move. There was something worrying about how he looked at her. Not scary, but very, very focused, as if he was the most amazing thing he had ever looked at. The dark clothes she found were her grandfather's old stuff, kept in a box since he died 5 years ago. They fit the stranger pretty well, though they were loose on his thin body. When she gave him the clothes, their fingers touched for just a second, and she felt a strange shock of electricity run up her arm. "Thank you," he said, and again, that voice seemed to ring out inside her in ways she could not tell. "You are very kind." Anyone would have done that, Arya answered, though she knew that wasn't completely true. Many people in the village would have been too scared to go out in a storm like that for a person they didn't know. While he changed into the dry clothes, she made a simple meal: hot soup, fresh bread, and tea made strong and sweet. The cooking work helped make her feel less nervous, but she couldn't get rid of the feeling that everything had changed the second she looked into those shiny silver eyes. When she turned back to him, now dressed and wrapped in one of her grandmother's blankets, she was surprised again by how he did not look like he fit in her small, plain house. Even with the simple clothes and his clear tiredness, there was something kingly about how he sat, something strong in how he held himself that showed he had power and was in charge. "What's your name?" she asked, putting the tray of food in front of him. "Alaric," he just said, not trying to touch the food. "Just Alaric." His smile was a mystery. Names have power. Sometimes it's smart to share them slowly. Arya felt a chill that was not caused by her wet clothes. That's a weird way to say it. "I am a weird man, I'm afraid." He pointed to the food. "This smells great, but I am not very hungry right now. The heat and safety are much more important." She looked upset. The soup was thick, and the bread was fresh baked that morning, but he barely ate any of it. Instead, he seemed happy to sit and watch her as she moved around the house, those weird light eyes following everything she did. "Are you from near here?" she asked, sitting in the chair across from him. "I don't know you from the village." "I'm from far away," Arya said gently. "Very far away, truly. I have been traveling for a very long time, longer than you could guess." There was something in his voice that sounded like deep secrets she couldn't understand, stories that might take forever to tell. Even though she was curious, she found herself scared to ask for more. A feeling told her that the answers might be more than she was ready to hear. "Well," she said at last, "you're welcome to stay until the storm is over and you feel better. It's the smallest thing I can do." "The smallest thing you can do," he repeated quietly, as if the words meant something very important. "And it might be the biggest thing anyone has done in hundreds of years." Before Arya could ask what he meant by that confusing thing he said, another flash of lightning lit up the house, followed right away by a loud crash of thunder that seemed to shake the air around them. Alaric's head quickly turned to the window, his whole body becoming stiff with a sudden wakefulness. For just a second, his eyes seemed to shine with a light inside that was surely not human. When he turned back to her, that strong, in-charge feeling was bigger than ever, and Arya felt a little bit of something that might have been fear or excitement. "The storm," he said quietly, "is only the start." The morning light came with surprising calm after the rough storm. The air smelled new and clean, washed by the night's wildness, and gold sunlight poured through Arya's small windows. She had slept poorly, her dreams filled with shiny silver eyes and quiet words she could not remember well when she woke up. When she came out of her room, she found Alaric standing by the window, very still as he looked out at the village outside. He had not moved from that spot, she realized quickly. His hair was still wet from the night before, and the blanket was sitting exactly where she had put it on the chair. "Did you sleep at all?" she asked softly. He turned to her with that mysterious smile. "Sleep and I are old enemies. I think the morning light is much more interesting than dreams." There was something in how he said old enemies that made her skin feel funny. Everything about this man seemed heavy with secret meanings, as if he spoke in a language she only half got. "Would you like to walk through the village with me?" Arya asked. "I need to check on some of the older people after the storm. I want to make sure they are okay." His eyes showed a real interest. "I would be happy to go with you." As they walked through the muddy roads, Arya had to notice how the villagers looked closely at Alaric. It wasn't just his handsome look or new face, there was something else in their faces, a mix of worry and knowing who he was that didn't make sense. Mrs. Fletcher actually made the sign of the cross when she saw him, saying something quietly about old blood coming back. But it was how Alaric acted that really worried her. He walked through the village as if he had walked these roads 1,000 times before. His steps were sure and brave even when the paths were covered by storm trash. More than once, he stopped to look closely at buildings that had been there for a very long time, rubbing his fingers along stone walls while whispering words in a language she did not know. "That bakery," he said suddenly, pointing to an old broken building that had been empty for many years. "It used to have the most beautiful rose garden behind it. The baker's daughter would take care of it every morning before the sun came up, singing old songs to make the flowers smell sweeter." Arya stopped walking, looking confused at him. "How could you possibly know that? That bakery has been empty since before I was born. Even my grandmother hardly remembered when it was still working." Alaric's face looked far away, as if he were seeing something much older than the now. Sometimes the past talks louder than the present, especially in places where so much happiness and sadness have mixed. They kept walking, but Arya found herself looking at him more closely. At the old church, he stopped quickly when the bells started to ring for morning prayers. His face turned white, whiter than it already was, and he pushed a hand to his head as if he were hurting. "Are you okay?" she asked, putting out her hand to help him stand firm. "The bells," he said, pushing the words through tight teeth. "They are louder than they were before." "Or before?" she said again, but he was already walking away from the church, his steps fast and decided. Near the village's very old well, Alaric quickly knelt next to a pile of rocks that looked like nothing but trash to Arya's eyes. But as he cleaned away hundreds of years of green moss and dirt, she could see the light shape of carved symbols that were almost smooth from time and weather. "This was a special worship place once," he said softly, his fingers following a design she couldn't see clearly. "People would come here to ask for help against the darkness, to push away the bad things that haunted at night." He looked up at her, and for a moment his eyes seemed to hold deep feelings of sadness that no normal person should carry. They were right to be afraid. "Alaric," Arya said gently, "how do you know all of this? These broken places, these stories? Nobody talks about them anymore. They are history everyone forgot." He was quiet for a long time, still kneeling by the very old stones. When he finally spoke, his voice was just a soft whisper. "What if I told you that some old stories are forgotten for a good reason? That some stories are hidden because the truth of them would scare living people very much?" A cold feeling went down Arya's back, and she quickly took one step back. "What are you saying?" Before he could answer, old Henrik the blacksmith came closer to them, his old lined face wrinkled with worry. He looked quickly and scared at Alaric, then pulled Arya to the side. "Sorry to bother you, miss," Henrik whispered, "but that man you're with, there is something wrong with him. Last night after the storm, I saw him walking through the village, just walking easily and calmly, while the wind was still loud enough to wake the dead." Arya's heart started to beat very fast. "That's not possible." "He was in my house all night getting better from the storm." Henrik shook his gray-haired head. "I saw him with my own eyes, I did, walking past the graveyard like he owned the place, talking to himself or maybe to someone I could not see. And, miss," Henrik's voice got even quieter, "the way he walked, the way he looked, it made me think of the old stories my grandmother used to tell about the vampire king who ruled these lands hundreds of years ago before the magic woman tied him up." "The vampire king is just a story, Henrik, a tale to scare children." "That's what we try to believe," Henrik agreed sadly. "But stories have a way of walking around us when we don't think they will. Just be careful, miss. There is old magic waking up. I can feel it deep inside me." When Arya walked back to Alaric, he was standing again, cleaning dirt from his hands. The old symbols were hidden again under the moss and trash as if they had never been found. "Ready to keep going?" he asked nicely. But I saw something in his face, a flash of knowing as if he had heard every single word of her talk with Henrik. That night, Arya stayed awake listening to the sounds outside her house. Just as she thought, she heard walking steps on the path. Slow, careful, planned. Through her window, she saw Alaric walking in the light of the moon, his light skin seeming to shine with its own bright light inside. He stopped under her window and looked up, his silver eyes finding hers with amazing exactness. Even from far away, she could see his mouth moving, making words she could not hear but somehow felt deep in her heart. Names from a very old, forgotten time floated through her mind like soft voices on the wind. Elisera, Morgrim, Valeth, the forgotten ones. Names that meant nothing to her waking brain but sent shivers of knowing through her memories while she slept. As she watched, Alaric lifted one hand in what could have been a hello or a blessing, and Arya understood with perfect clarity that whatever Henrik thought, whatever not possible truth was hidden under Alaric's strange outside, she was already too deep in its trap to get out. The next morning brought a visitor she didn't expect. Father Marcus stood at Arya's door. His face, that usually kind, now looked strained with worry lines that seemed to have gotten worse overnight. "Arya, my child," he said, looking quickly and worried over her shoulder into the house. "I've come to talk to you about your visitor." "He's just a traveler who got caught in the storm, Father," answered Arya, though, even to herself, the words sounded empty and fake. "Is he?" Father Marcus stepped nearer, making his voice quieter. "The church bells rang strangely yesterday when he walked past. They haven't done that since, well, since the old, dark days that are best left forgotten." Before Arya could answer, Alaric appeared behind her, moving with that worrying quietness she was starting to know. Father Marcus took a step back without meaning to, his hand quickly going to the silver cross around his neck. "Good morning, Father," Alaric said nicely, but there was something like a hunter in his smile. A beautiful day after such a rough storm. The priest's face had turned white, whiter than it already was.
He spoke quietly about important things at the church, and rushed away without saying anything else, looking scared over his shoulder. "He seems upset," Alaric said calmly. "Everyone in the village is worried because of you," Arya said, turning to look at him completely. "Henrik thinks you are tied to old stories. Father Marcus acts like you are the devil himself. And you?" She looked closely at his calm face. "You act like you know exactly why they are scared." Alaric was quiet for a long time. Those silver eyes looked deeply at her face, as if searching for one thing. Finally, he sighed, a sound that seemed to hold the heaviness of hundreds of years. "Maybe it's time I stayed somewhere else," he said. "I've bothered your kindness long enough, and I wouldn't want to bring problems to your house." "No," Arya said quickly, surprising herself with how strongly she answered. "I mean, you can stay as long as you need, even with everything strange about this time. I feel like you fit here somehow." Something flashed in his look, maybe hope or feeling better. "You are amazing, Arya, more amazing than you know." Later that afternoon, as they sat by the fire, sharing a quiet meal that Alaric once again almost did not eat, Arya made a choice that would change everything. She reached inside her dress and took out a light silver necklace, at the end of which hung an old small box, the only thing she had left from her great-grandmother's things. "This belonged to my family," she said softly, holding it out for him to look at. "My grandmother said it was very old, given down through many years of women in our family line. I've never been able to open it, but sometimes I feel like it is waiting for something." The moment Alaric's eyes saw the small box, his whole manner changed. The careful face of nice mystery he had worn for days broke, showing something real and in need under it. His hand started to shake as he looked closely at the complicated silver design cut into its top, a weaving together of roses and sharp thorns under a half-moon shape. "Where did you get this?" His voice was just a soft whisper, rough with a strong feeling she could not name. "I told you, it's been in my family for generations. Why, do you know what it is?" Alaric's laugh was mean and empty. "Know it, my dear girl? That design has been in my dreams for 300 years. It's the seal of Iliasera, the Moonwaver, the magic woman who tied me to this terrible half-life." Arya's blood turned to ice inside her. "What are you talking about? The stories Henrik told you, the stories Father Marcus is scared of, they are all true." Alaric got up from his chair, starting to walk like a trapped animal. "I am the vampire king of these lands. Or, I was, before Iliasera took away my power and forced me to walk around as almost a normal person." "That's not real," Arya whispered. But even as she said it, things started to make sense. His white skin, his dislike of food and church bells, his knowing the village's very old history. "The spell that tied me was connected to her family line," Alaric went on, his silver eyes now shining brightly with strong feeling. "As long as her family lived, carrying her magic in their blood, I would stay weak, caught between dying and really living. But if one of her family were to want to break the seal—" "You're saying I came from this magic woman?" Arya's voice broke with shock. "The design proves it. The way you found me in the storm, the way you brought me in without asking. It wasn't being nice, Arya, it was fate. The magic in your blood called to the bad spell in mine, pulling us together even though it seemed impossible." Arya took a shaky step back, the small box suddenly feeling heavy, like a huge stone around her neck. You're crazy. These are just old stories. Tales that got mixed up with the real world. Am I? Alarek's body seemed to shake for a moment, and she saw a flash of something else under his human look. Something very old and strong, and very scary but beautiful. Look at me. Really look and tell me I'm just a man caught in the storm. When she made herself look into his eyes, she saw the truth burning there like shiny silver fire. This was not a regular person, no simple traveler. The strong feeling she had felt from the start, the power in how he stood, even with his clear weakness, it was what was left of a power that had once controlled the night itself. "What do you want from me?" she asked, her voice hardly heard. "Nothing you're not willing to give," he said, softly, taking a slow, careful step toward her. "But I need you to understand. Without you, I am stuck in this half-life forever. With you choosing to help, I could be whole again. And if I say no?" His face looked very, very sad. "Then I stay how I am, and you stay safe from the darkness I once led. The choice, dear Arya, is all yours." But even as he said those words, they both knew that the choice was already made the second she pulled him from that storm. The design around her neck beat with a warm light, reacting to him like a key, knowing the lock it was meant for. Outside, storm clouds were coming together again in the sky, and with them, Arya felt, would come others who had felt the old power waking up, others who might not be happy to give her the nice thing of choosing. The Vampire King had come back to the world, even in his weak state, and she was the only one who could choose if that return would mean saving or ruin. For both of them, the whispers began at sunset. Arya first noticed them as she took care of her small garden behind the house. Voices traveled on the evening wind, too far away to hear the words clearly, but close enough to make her feel cold. When she looked up from her plants, she saw shapes moving between the trees at the edge of the forest, light-colored figures that seemed to float instead of walk. "They found me," Alarek said quietly behind her. She had not heard him come near, but his being there no longer scared her. In fact, she found his closeness strangely calming as those ghost-like shapes walked slowly along the tree line. Who are they? Vampires who worked for me hundreds of years ago, some still true, others not so. His jaw got tight as he watched the shadows move between the trees. A terrifying shout rang out across the village, and many windows quickly shut because of it. Arya moved closer to Alarak, feeling the not-natural cold coming from his skin. What do they want? Some want to get their spots back next to me when I get all my power back again. Others want to make sure I never do. His silver eyes showed the fading light like mirrors. And all of them want you, Arya. You are the one who holds the key to everything.
That night they came. Arya woke up to the sound of scratching at her windows, long, slow scratches that made her think of sharp claws on the glass. Through the cloth covering, she could see shapes moving outside, going around the house like hunters following hurt animals. "Stay away from the windows," Alaric ordered, his voice having a power that made her listen right away. For the first time since she had found him, he looked truly risky, his light skin almost glowing in the dark, his movements smooth and like a hunter. The front door broke open fast with a noise like thunder. 3 figures walked in, and Arya's breath stopped in her throat. They had been pretty once, she could see that, but hundreds of years of darkness had changed them into something awful. Their eyes glowed red in the dark, and when they smiled, their long, sharp teeth shone like white knives. "Hello, my lord," the tallest one said, her voice like sweet honey poured over broken glass. "We have missed you so much." "Seraphina," Alaric replied calmly. "Still as over the top as always, I see." The vampire named Seraphina laughed, a sound that made the window shake. 300 years of freedom have taught us a lot. We have learned to live quite well without a king. Then why are you here? Because stories spread fast in the darkness, and the news of you waking up has reached some very curious people.
Seraphina's hot look moved to Arya, who felt like a little mouse being watched by a snake, including those who would rather see you stay tied up forever. Before anyone could do anything, the house filled with more dark shapes. They flowed through the broken door and smashed windows like liquid darkness, becoming real as more vampires appeared from the night. Arya counted at least 12, their eyes shining with wanting food and hate. "The girl from the family line comes with us," said a vampire with cuts across his face. "The Crimson Court has ordered it." "Over my dead body," Alaric snapped, and for a moment, His weak body seemed to flash with the memory of his old power. "That can be done," Seraphina said softly. "You are barely more than a normal man now, Alaric. What can you possibly do against all of us?" The fight started quickly, with rough anger. Alaric moved faster than anyone could see, his hands turning into claws that left shiny silver lines in the air. But he was outnumbered and weak, and soon he was thrown against the house wall with a force that felt like breaking bones. "Run!" he gasped to Arya as blood dripped from his mouth. "Get to the church! They cannot follow you onto holy ground." But before she could move, hands as strong as iron grabbed her arms. The cut-up vampire's breath was cold against her neck as he whispered, "The court has such fun plans for you, little magic woman." Then, in a way that wasn't possible, the house door opened again. But this time it was not more vampires who came in. It was the villagers, led by Henrik the blacksmith and Father Marcus. They held torches and silver weapons, their faces set with a strong will. "Let her go," Father Marcus ordered, his voice steady even with the fear in his eyes. Seraphina laughed to make fun of them. "Normal people, how sweet! Do you really think—" Her words stopped quickly as Henrik threw a handful of silver dust into the air. Where it touched the vampire's skin, it burned like a strong chemical, making some of them scream and fall back. "Old ways are hard to forget in this village," Henrik said sadly. "We remember the old ways of fighting the darkness." In the mess that happened next, Alaric fought to stand up, his face covered in pain and anger. "Arya," he shouted, reaching his hand toward her. "We must go now." She did not stop to think. Breaking away from the cut-up vampire's weak hold, she ran to Alaric. Together they smashed through the house's back window as silver weapons hit against not natural claws behind them. They ran through the trees, branches ripping at their clothes and faces. Behind them, not human screams filled the night as both vampires and villagers ran after them. Enemies came together in their wish to own the one woman who could change everything. "Where can we go?" Arya panted as they tripped through the dark. "Away from here," Alaric answered, his arms strong around her middle as he partly carried her over fallen trees and through small rivers. "There are old, broken places deeper in the forest, places where the old magic is still powerful. They might keep us safe." As they ran away through the night, Arya knew that her calm life was finished forever. Behind them was her burning house and a village ruined by a not-natural war. Ahead was only not knowing what would happen, and the growing knowledge that she was no longer just Arya the plant seller. She was the key to a power that could change the world, and everyone wanted to take that key for themselves. The empty church sat like a broken crown among the very old trees. Its falling walls were covered in green moss, and its colored glass windows were broken long ago by time. But even in broken pieces, it held power. Arya could feel it buzzing in the air like a breath being held, something holy and safe that made the dark shapes pull back. They had been running for 3 days, sleeping in holes in the ground and drinking from forest rivers while the chase kept going around them. Arya's dress was ripped and dirty. Her feet were sore and had bubbles from walking. But it was the heaviness of the truth that truly wore her out. Every time she looked at Alaric, she saw both the man who had saved her from vampire claws and the old king whose waking up had brought trouble to her world. "We can rest here," Alaric said softly, guiding her through the broken door of the church. "The old blessing still works. They cannot come into holy ground." Arya fell onto a stone that might have been part of the praying table, her legs finally tired from being so worn out. "How long can we hide? They will never stop hunting us." "No," he agreed quietly. "They won't." As if called by his words, shapes started coming out of the forest around the church. Vampires appeared from the shadows. Some she knew from the house fight. Others were new faces changed by hundreds of years of darkness. They made a circle around the broken building, their eyes shining like hot coals in the evening light. "Alaric," Seraphina's voice sounded loud across the open space. "Enough with the games. You are trapped, weak, and they are too many for you. Give us the girl, and we might let you live long enough to remember what real power feels like." From another side came the cut-up vampire's mean laughter. "The Crimson Court is getting tired, fallen king. Our master wants the magic woman brought to him alive. What she decides to do with her power after that, well, that will be decided for her." Alaric's hands squeezed into fists, his silver eyes burning with anger and upset. "Cowards! Too scared to fight me fairly." "Fairly?" Seraphina's laugh to make fun of him sounded loudly off the church walls. "You are just a shadow of who you were, a normal person pretending to be a person who cannot die." Arya watched the vampires walking outside like wolves around a pen full of sheep, and felt something break inside her chest. This was my fault. My family line, my being alive, had brought this war to people who did nothing wrong. My house was burned. My village was scared. And now, even this safe place would finally fail. "There has to be another way," she whispered. Alaric turned to her, and in his eyes she saw the heaviness of hundreds of years. All the fights fought, all the power gone, all the loneliness of his terrible life. "There is," he said quietly, "but the cost." "Tell me." He was quiet for a long time, as if the words themselves were too unsafe to say. When he finally spoke, his voice was just a soft whisper. "The spell can be broken, Arya. Totally broken. But it needs a person to willingly give up blood from Elisara's family line, given freely to bring back what was stolen." His look met hers, strong and needing help. "Your blood mixed with mine would break the spell that has held me for 300 years. I would get back all my power, become the vampire king for real again. And then, I could keep you safe from all of them, the other groups, the Crimson Court, anyone who would try to hurt what is mine." His voice got louder, more in control. "But Arya, you must understand. The magic would tie us together forever. What happens to you would be tied to what happens to me. Your life energy would be joined to my life that cannot die. You would be neither completely human nor vampire, but something new, something that has never been before." The heaviness of the choice sat on her shoulders like a big mountain. Outside, the vampires were getting braver, checking the edges of the holy ground. Soon, their hunger would be stronger than their care. What if you become a cruel ruler again? What if power makes you bad? It might, he agreed with hard honesty. Power has a way of changing people, even those who start with good reasons. I can't promise you that I will be the same man you saved from that storm. Then why should I try it? Alaric moved nearer, kneeling in front of her like someone asking for a favor in front of a queen. "Because in 300 years of darkness, you are the only light I found. Because when I look at you, I remember what it feels like to have hope. Because," his voice cracked a little, "because I love you, Arya. Not just for what you can give me, but for who you are. Your kindness, your bravery, your strong refusal to leave people who need help." Water filled his eyes. "Arya, the choice is yours," he said again, standing up. "Break the seal and risk letting loose a monster, or let us both die here while the world burns around us." Outside, the vampires had started to sing in an old language that made the air itself shake with evil power. The church's safe wall was getting weaker because of their attack together. Arya closed her eyes and felt for the small box at her neck. Elisara's design was warm against her skin.
In her mind, she could almost hear the voice of her family from long ago speaking across the hundreds of years. The choice was always meant to be yours, child. Love or fear, trust or sadness, choose smartly. When she opened her eyes, Alaric was looking at her with a look of such easy-to-hurt hope that it made her stop breathing. "If I do this," she said slowly, "if I break the seal and tie myself to you forever, promise me one thing, anything. Promise me that no matter how much power you get back, you will remember this moment. Remember that your power came not from fighting and winning, but from love given freely." Alaric's smile was shining, changing his light face with happiness and amazement. "I swear it on whatever is left of my heart." The church walls shook as the vampire's attack got stronger. Cracks showed up in the old stones and cold wind began to leak through the spaces. Arya stood up, her choice made. Then let's finish this. The magic ceremony was easier than Arya had thought, and much more important. Alaric took a small silver knife from his coat, where he had been keeping it hidden. She could not tell where, but it shone with old power in the church's low light. The vampires outside had become wild and crazy, their singing getting very loud as they felt what was going to happen. "Your blood first," Alaric said softly, giving her the knife. "It must be given with a willing heart and knowing completely what you are choosing." Arya took the knife, surprised by how warm it felt in her hand. The metal seemed to beat with life, reacting to her touch like a living thing. Without stopping to think, she pulled the knife across her hand, watching red drops fall onto the cracked church floor. The second her blood touched the holy stone, the world burst with light. The small box at her neck glowed like a star that had fallen, and suddenly the church was full of the ghost-like shape of a woman in long, soft clothes. Eli Sara, a moonwaver, stood in front of them, her clear shape shining with silver light. "My family member," the magic woman spoke, her voice sounding from all around and nowhere. "You understand what you are about to let loose." "I understand," Arya answered, surprised by how calm and steady her own voice was. "I'm choosing to believe in love instead of fear." Eli Sara's ghost-like smile was a sad ache. "Then you are smarter than I was, child. I tied him up because I was scared, not because it was right. Maybe love can win where getting revenge failed." The old magic woman turned to Alaric and her face became serious. "And you, king who fell, what do you promise?" Alaric knelt before the spirit, his head bent low in true respect. "I promise by her blood and mine that I will use my power that is back to keep safe, not to fight and take over, to love, not to rule others. And if I break this promise," he looked up at Arya with eyes full of amazement, "then let her be the one to kill me." Eli Sara nodded slowly, then started to disappear. "The spell is yours to break, granddaughter. Choose well." Outside, the church walls finally broke. Vampires rushed through the holes like a wave of shadow and wanting, their eyes burning with happy hate. Seraphina led the attack, her sharp teeth showing in a wild smile. "Too late," she yelled. "The girl is ours." But Arya was already moving. She pressed her bleeding hand to Alaric's mouth, feeling him take a sharp breath in as her blood touched his lips. The small box around her neck burst with a light so bright it was blinding, and a power stronger than anything she had ever thought rushed through her body. The spell that tied him broke like glass. Alaric's change was instant and very scary. His human cover fell away like skin he no longer needed, showing the real shape of the Vampire King. He stood 7 feet tall, his light skin now glowing like moonlight, his silver eyes burning with the power of hundreds of years. Dark wings opened from his shoulders, and when he smiled, his long, sharp teeth shone like white knives. The vampires who were attacking stopped in the middle of their rush, suddenly seeing their true master in all his scary greatness. "Kneel," Alaric ordered, and his voice shook the very ground. Most of the vampires fell to their knees right away, overwhelmed by the strong, raw power coming from their king, who was back to full strength. But Seraphina and the cut-up vampire stopped for a second, their faces twisted with anger and fear. "You think a few hundred years of weakness have made us forget how to fight you?" Seraphina growled. Alaric's laughter was like thunder. "I think you have forgotten what real power looks like." He moved faster than lightning, his clawed hand grabbing Seraphina's throat. She had just started to scream before she fell into dust, blown away before she could take another breath. The cut-up vampire turned to run, but Alaric's voice froze him where he stood. "Go back to your Crimson Court. Tell them the Vampire King has come back, and he is no longer interested in their games." The rest of the vampires ran away into the night like leaves before a storm, carrying the news of their master's return to every dark place in the world. When the church was finally quiet, Alaric turned back to Arya. The scary power was still there, still burning in his silver eyes, but something else was different. The cold distance she had feared was gone. Instead, she saw amazement, thanks, and a love so deep that it made her stop breathing. "How do you feel?" she asked softly. "Whole," he said simply. "For the first time in hundreds of years, I feel whole." She could feel the change in herself, too, the link between them buzzing like a wire with electricity. Their life energies were twisted together in ways that no one could understand. She was still human, still herself, but there was something more now, something that lasts forever. What happens now? Alaric knelt before her again, this time not as someone asking for a favor, but as a king giving his crown to his queen. "Now we start again.
a new time, a new way to rule, not by fear, but by the power of love that is freely given. He took her hand in his, putting his lips to her hand where the magic cut was already getting better. If you will have me, Arya, if you will help me build something better than what was here before. She looked around the broken church, imagining it fixed to its old great look. She thought of her village, her people, and all the others who lived in fear of the darkness. With Alaric's power and her smart thinking, maybe they could really keep them safe. Yes, she whispered, and the words sounded through the night like a promise. Let's build something beautiful together. As the sun came up over the very old forest, the vampire king and his human queen stood together in the broken pieces of the old world, ready to make something great from its dust. The king who was forgotten no more, but he had chosen love instead of fighting to win.